Well, everybody, for the 8th time in a row, it is now time to make my playoff predictions for the 2022 NFL playoffs. And oh boy, this is going to be one interesting year in the playoffs. But before we do that, I have to show everyone my stats for my Week 18 picks. As last week, I went 10-6, which is worse than Week 17 because I went 10-5, I believe. But still 10-6. So overall, I finished 2022 with a record of 107-102 with a 63.1 percentage, which is slightly better by just one game and a tie from 2021, where I went 170, 101, and 1. But still was not beaten 2020, where I went 170, 85, and 1, which I got almost 2/3 correct. A lot better in 2019, where I had 61.9%. I'm wondering if 2020 is my best year overall. I had to look up way back to see. But it is better than last year, but by just one game and a tie. So, not a good season these last 2 years of making my picks, other than 2020. But anyways, now let's get to my playoff predictions. So now before we begin, time to talk about how the teams and how they were and how they're going into the playoffs. So first off, the AFC side, the Chiefs, after not being number one last year, were number one this year with one of the best offenses in the league. Their defense was a little bit suspect, but they're definitely better than last year, especially since Mahomes wasn't throwing so many interceptions last year when they had that horrible start to the year. And they have tied the Eagles for the best record in the league. They're definitely scary, unlike last year. The Bills, of course, just as good as I thought they were last year, but without all the losses they had last year. Remember when they went 11-6? They went 13-3, and if they actually finished the Bengals game and won, they would have had the number one seed. But unfortunately, they're once again stuck as the number 2 seed. And the Bengals, the AFC champion runner-up from last year, after the slow start of the year, they improved and won pretty much like 9 or so games in a row as they finished 12-4, matching their previous several years' best records of all time. Definitely looking very good in the playoffs as well. And then you look at the surprise team, the Jaguars, who were the worst team in the league the last 2 years in a row. And all of a sudden, near the end of the year, they turned it around massively to finish 9-8 and make the playoffs and win the AFC South for the first time since 2017. Could they go on a magical run like the 2017 team did? That was crazy. And then the AFC wildcard teams, we first look at the Chargers, who made the playoffs for the first time since 2018. After they had a slow start to the year, they managed to turn around, and they've won, I think, 4 in a row to get in as a wildcard team. We'll see how well they do, especially since Herbert's played a lot better after the slow start this year. And then the Ravens, who, remember, I predicted after a terrible 6-game losing streak to end last year off, and they just weren't that good this year. I thought they were going to make it back. Well, they did, as they're back in the playoffs for the first time since 2020. Although they did not really play good down the stretch, plus Lamar Jackson is still hurt and might not play this week, so not looking good for the Ravens to go into the playoffs. And then the team that ended up being the Ravens, like from last year, is the Dolphins. They're in the playoffs for the first time since 2016, and unlike the Ravens, they actually were really good early on in the year after the 3-0 start. Then they lost 3 in a row. Then they won 5 in a row, and they actually were at one point, I think, the leading team in the AFC, like the number 1 seed, or right up there. They were really good, but then, of course, they had the tough schedule, and then Tua got hurt, so they ended up losing 5 in a row, almost losing to the Jets earlier yesterday when you see this video, but they held on to win it, to make it to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. But of course, if Tua is not going to be there, then the Dolphins are going to be pretty much just limping in, because they really need Tua in order to do good. Then we look at the NFC side, and that is the Eagles. I didn't think they were going to be really this good this year, but turns out I was wrong, as they went 14-3, which I believe is the best record in franchise history, as they made it to the playoffs for a second year in a row. They won the NFC East for the first time since 2019, and they got home field advantage for the first time since 2017. Although they kind of slipped a little bit near the end of the season, so kind of a little bit of a concern maybe going into the playoffs, but we'll see. But the big team that you have to worry about in the NFC is the 49ers, as they made the playoffs for a second year in a row, and they won the NFC West for the first time since 2019. Oh man, at first nothing was going right for them. They were 3-4, remember. Trey Lance got hurt, even though he played terrible. Then Jimmy G comes in, and he was playing really good, and all of a sudden near the end of the year, the 49ers started like a scary team, but then he goes down to injury, and then Brock Purdy comes in as Mr. Relevant, and all of a sudden he has like one of the best seasons up there, probably for undrafted rookies, and they've continued to win, and then their offense got even better. The 49ers are honestly the best team in the NFC, and maybe could challenge like the Bills as the best team in the league. They are unbelievably scary. They are a major threat in the NFC right now. And then there's a reverse for the Vikings, who, remember last year, they were 8-9, but almost all their games were close, and if they won them all, they'd be 16-1. Well, this year they were winning them all, their close games. But they also got blown out a lot, so even though they went 13-4 and won the division, made the playoffs for the first time since 2019 and won the NFC North for the first time since 2017, they are the worst 13-win team probably ever. I think they have more points allowed than scored, even though they did blow out the Bears today. I had to look it up again, but remember, they got blown out by the Eagles, Cowboys, and Packers. And even their loss against the Lions was kind of a spanking, too. So, the Vikings really, I don't think, are that good this year. And I don't see much going for them. But hey, they've managed to keep games tough, so you can't fully underestimate them. And then, of course, the Buccaneers. After not thinking they were going to do as good this year when Brady retired, then he comes back thinking they were going to be a Super Bowl contender this year, and they just weren't. Brady is pretty much washed up, and I really hope he retires after this year. The defense has been very good, but it's also been kind of inconsistent. Their running game's been horrible. Basically, their whole offense has been dog shit. Kind of like Patriots were in 2019's offense. And they completely fell apart, and they finished 8-9, their first losing season since 2019, but they still won the NFC South for the second year in a row, made the playoffs for the third year in a row, because the rest of the NFC South sucked. So the Buccaneers became the fourth team since 2010 to win the division with a losing record. 6 team overall to have a losing record in the playoffs. And I don't really see much faith in them, but you never know. It is Brady, remember. And then we look at the wildcard teams, as is the Cowboys, who matched their win total from last year. I had a lot of faith in them going early in the year, because remember, I was very hyped on them last year. I thought they were going to make it all the way to the NFC Championship in 2021. This year, I don't think they're that good. I think they're honestly overrated. Dak has had a horrible season compared to previous year. Their defense has improved, but the offense progressing so much that I think they're worse than last year, even though they matched their record from last year. I don't really see them going much anywhere, but hey, they did they are one of the best teams in the league record-wise, and they have to play the Buccaneers, so anything can happen. And then the Giants, making the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Stunning, remember, 6-1, 7-2. I thought they were going to begin to collapse, but I thought with their incredible record would be enough to limp in. Well, that's exactly what happened. They had a massive slump near the end of the year to go, I believe it was 2-4-1, but it was still just enough to get in to the playoffs. Don't see them doing much, but hey, you can't underestimate them either. And then finally, the Seahawks. The team that we thought were going to be like one of the worst teams in 2022 when they traded away Russell Wilson and let Bobby Wagner go. Well, turns out we were wrong too. They ended up going 9-8, having their first win season in the playoffs for the first time since 2020. As Geno Smith played good, the offense is really good, although sometimes they're a little inconsistent, but the defense is a big problem. So yeah, that is all 14 teams in the playoffs and how they got here, how they are. So now, let's get into my playoff predictions. So here is the playoff bracket, of course. The AFC, it's the number 1 seed, goes to the Chiefs. They have the bye as the Dolphins are at the Bills. The the Ravens are at the Bengals, and the Chargers are at the Jaguars. And the NFC, it's the Eagles with the bye, with the Seahawks at 49ers, the Giants at Vikings, and the Cowboys at Buccaneers. So anyways, let's get to my picks, starting off with the wild card round, as it's going to start off with the Seahawks at 49ers. This is the first time they're playing in the playoffs against each other since the 2013 NFC Championship, which the Seahawks won to make their Super Bowl win 2 weeks later. The 49ers, of course, crushed the Seahawks in Week 2, remember, 27-7, and then they beat them later on in Seattle on Thursday night to win the division, and they spanked them too. So the 49ers just outclassed the Seahawks, so I don't really see the Seahawks doing anything. So I'm going to pick the 49ers to beat the Seahawks. So then after that, it would be the Chargers at the Jaguars, as this is, I believe, the first time the Chargers and Jaguars are ever playing each other in the playoffs. They played each other in Week 3, remember, when the Jaguars visited the Chargers, and they destroyed the Chargers 38-10. It was definitely a big blowout victory. Now, of course, the Jaguars definitely, I feel like, are getting back to their rhythm like they were at the beginning of like Week 2 and 3 when they crushed the Colts and Chargers. But the Chargers have also gotten better too. This could go either way. This could be an interesting game. But I think I still trust that 38-10 thrashing the Jaguars did. So I think I'm still going to pick the Jaguars for that one. But I won't be surprised if the Chargers get it. Then we get to the Sunday games. It will start off with the Dolphins at the Bills, as this is the first time they play each other in the playoffs. since the 1998 wild card round, which the Dolphins won that one. So the Bills, of course, they lost to the Dolphins, remember, in week 3, and then they almost lost to them again later on in the year, 32-29 or something like that. So the Dolphins, if Tua plays, they are going to be a major threat to the Bills. Do not underestimate the Dolphins. They somehow this year have the Bills' number. They beat them earlier once, and they almost beat them again the second time. The Dolphins should not be underestimated, especially if Tua plays. They're definitely not 9-8 team. They're way better than their 9-8 record. They just had the horrible 3-week scheduled tough games, and then Tua got knocked out. So if Tua plays, the Dolphins can be scared, and I would not be surprised if they somehow pull off an upset to beat the Bills. But I have no idea if Tua is going to be playing or not. But I'm still going to probably still pick the Bills overall. So there we go. Then it would be the Giants at the Vikings, as this will be the first time they play each other in the playoffs since, I believe, the 2000 NFC Championship. And this is a rematch from 2 weeks ago when the Vikings beat them on a last-second field goal, 27-24. Was that overtime, maybe? I can't remember. So, yeah, we have history. It's just seen recently how they played. And the Vikings won a close one, as they've pretty much done all year until they lose. And the Giants play tough, too. This can go either way. I will not be surprised whoever wins this game. But I think I might still overall trust the Vikings more, just barely. So I'll pick that. And with that, they would head to head to the 49ers. And then we get the final Sunday game, as it would be the Ravens at the Bengals, as it's a rematch from just this last week. And remember, if the Ravens won this, well, actually, it wouldn't have mattered because the Chargers lost. But if the Ravens won and the Chargers won, and they would still be the 3rd, 6th seed, this would have been a coin toss game, and the Ravens could have possibly hosted the game. But since the Bengals won, it didn't matter because the Ravens are going to be at the Bengals. And this is the first time ever they're playing each other in the playoffs. Of course, division teams, they played twice early in the year. The Ravens won last-second field goal in week 5, remember. But then just earlier today, when you see the video, the Bengals pretty much spanked the Ravens, especially since they self-inflicted their injuries with all the turnovers. And of course, remember, Lamar Jackson didn't play, and who knows if he's going to be even playing this Sunday coming up. That's completely up in the air. But honestly, even if Lamar did play, I don't trust the Ravens in this scenario. So I'm picking the Bengals for this one. So then finally we get to the Monday night game, as it'll be the Cowboys at Buccaneers, as this is the first time they're playing each other in the playoffs since, I believe, the 1982 wildcard game, I think. I think that's the last time they played each other in the playoffs. So, of course, this will be a rematch from week 1 when the Buccaneers went to Arlington and crushed the Cowboys 19-9, I think it was. Or 19-6, or whatever. It was a defensive slugfest. Brady looked bad. Dak looked horrible. He got knocked out. And the Buccaneers ended up winning that. So, this one is kind of a tough one. Because, like I said, I don't think the Cowboys are that good. But I also don't think the Buccaneers are really that good. Even though the Cowboys have 4 more wins, they really are not that good. But, it's a tough one. And the Buccaneers did beat the Cowboys earlier in the year. Oh boy, this comes down to who you probably trust more. It's a tough one. But I think... oh boy. I think I might have to go with the Cowboys, because I think I trust the Buccaneers even less. Okay guys, I had to remake this video just a little bit ago, as it turns out, thanks to someone on YouTube for pointing this out, I fucked up the playoff bracket. I had the Jaguars visiting the Bills and the Bengals at the Chiefs in the division round. That's not how it's supposed to be. The Jaguars are the lowest seed remaining, therefore they go to the Chiefs and the Bengals instead visit the Bills. I have absolutely no idea how I fucked up that badly, because I know my seeds. That just happened. So thank you for pointing it out, YouTuber who mentioned it. So now I have to quickly refix the AFC divisional rounds because of the incorrect I said. So anyways, as I said, for my first divisional matchup, which was the original AFC Championship of mine, is the Bengals at Bills, which, of course, since the game never finished, it's at a neutral, well, not a neutral site, it's going to be at the Bills, but either way, we don't really have much history on the last few years, because the last time they played, the teams were radically different, and they never finished their game, so I have no idea how they would have played. But I still would probably pick the Bills, even more so in this scenario, since they would actually be hosting instead of a neutral site, which I originally thought. And the Jaguars at Chiefs, The Jaguars, of course, visited the Chiefs earlier in the year, and they lost. It was like 27-17, but they were kind of close, so it wasn't like a blowout or anything like that. But I think the Chiefs, in the end, would still win it. So the AFC Championship, which would be the Bills at the Chiefs, and of course, this would be the neutral site game, since I never talked about it in my previous video. I think this would actually make the Chiefs worse, because the Bills, just like the Bengals, can beat the Chiefs regularly now, it seems to be. Like, the Chiefs and Bills, Bills and Bengals are the Chiefs' Achilles heel at the moment. So I think, especially at a neutral site, I think the Bills could pull it off. And now, for my Super Bowl pick, still being the Bills on the AFC side, the rest of the field is still relevant. So I hope you enjoyed the rest. Then it'll be the Cowboys at the Eagles. This is the first time they've played each other in the playoffs since, I believe, the 2009 wildcard round. And this will be interesting because they play each other twice, remember, as a divisional team. The Eagles won the first one at home 26-17. And then the Cowboys beat them, God, it was like 37-34 or something like that in Arlington on Christmas Eve. Very high score and a very close one. Now, of course, the funny thing in both those games is that each team's quarterback was knocked out. Cowboys for the first game and then Eagles for the second one. So this would be the first game, as long as Hurts plays, that both teams play each other fully maxed out probably. Be interesting, but I think I trust the Eagles more, so I'm going to pick the Eagles to get, and they'll be in the NFC Championship for the first time since 2017. And then it'll be the Vikings at 49ers. This is the first time they play each other in the playoffs since the 2019 divisional round. They played each other last year too, but I think the 49ers kind of spanked the Vikings, and of course, they crushed the Vikings 27-10 in that divisional round game 3 years ago. The 49ers are just on a whole new level. The Vikings are really not that good. Just getting lucky with all their wins, so I'm going to pick the 49ers for this one. So then, the NFC Championship would be the 49ers at the Eagles. This would be the first time they've played each other in the playoffs since, I believe, the 1996 NFC wild card round. This would be interesting, and if anything, I think the Eagles would be a massive underdog, kind of like how in 2017. But this team, the 49ers, is honestly even more scary than the Vikings team was in 2017. One of the best defense in the league, combined with now one of the best offense in the league. They really rival like the Bills in terms of statistical balance. They are really scary. And I just can't see anyone that really challenges the 49ers in the NFC side right now, so I'm going to pick the 49ers to beat the Eagles. So that would be my Super Bowl for 57. The Bills and the 49ers. The 49ers making the Super Bowl for the first time since 2019 as well. So, the Super Bowl, the Bills and 49ers. Who would get it? Oh man, that would be a tough one. Because they're both pretty evenly matched, I think. The only slight I could think of is maybe the Bills, because Josh Allen has that turnover problem, because he does have a lot of games where he throws a lot of interceptions. Whereas Brock Purdy, has been pretty consistent, I think 2, sometimes 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's been really consistent, whereas Allen has been kind of all over the place somewhat this year. And it really might come down to the quarterback play. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be tough. This is a tough pick because they're pretty balanced. So, oh boy. Oh boy, this is a tough one. I think, with I just mentioned about Allen being kind of inconsistent with all the interceptions, I think I just might have to pick the 49ers over the Bills in a close call. Because it's really difficult to pick. They are both pretty damn even right now. Both teams are this might be one of the more equally balanced Super Bowl predictions I think I've had in a long time. Because there really is not that much to say that one team has over the other. So with my prediction, the Bills would win the Super Bowl in their first title since 1994. So, those are my predictions. And of course, my Super Bowl predictions in the playoffs, I got right. I've been doing it since 2015. I've only gotten that first Super Bowl right in 2015 with the Broncos and Panthers. Every year since, I've got them wrong. Something wrong. Patriots and Cowboys in 2016, wrong. 2017, Patriots and Vikings, wrong. 2018, Ravens and Saints, wrong. 2019, Ravens and 49ers, wrong. 2020, Bills and Packers, wrong. And 2021, Chiefs and Packers, wrong. So we'll see. Who knows? Maybe I jinxed the 49ers and Bills since my history of Super Bowl predictions are not really good. And of course, if the Super Bowl prediction is not the same, or if something happens between the Bills or 49ers that I feel like I have to do an updated Super Bowl video, I will do that. But right now, my Super Bowl prediction would be the 49ers over the Bills in a close one. But we'll see. Coming up next week for the Wild Card, Divisional, AFC Conference Championships, and the Super Bowl. I cannot wait for the rest of the playoffs to begin. So see you all next time.